China for themselves. Now, to do this, to start a war basically, and to fund it, and to continue it, you need resources. You need raw materials to make bullets, tanks, guns, ships. You need resources like iron, rubber, oil. Resources that we, the Americans, were supplying to the Japanese. And inadvertently, we were helping them continue this war in China. So, obviously, we see them as a growing threat. And in order to help prevent them from continuing this war, we pull the plug. We say no more resources. The equivalent of this, let's say Skylar, for example, was texting on his phone. And he had those portable battery packs, that they've got in the store nowadays. And that battery pack was plugged into the wall. He's got a constant supply of power to his phone. Now, obviously, me being the teacher, I don't want that to happen because I need him to stay focused in class on what's going on. So what I do is I put an embargo on him. I pull the plug. Now, he's got a battery pack, though. He can continue his texting, the war, for quite some time. But that battery pack's going to run out eventually, and so will the power on his phone. And that's what's happening with the war in China. Japan can only continue the war for so long with those materials cut off. And obviously Japan sees that as a threat to them. They see that move made against them by America, an aggressive response. And obviously they don't take kindly to that. And due to a culmination of us failing to negotiate with them, they see war as inevitable. And therefore, they're like, we're going to make the first move. We're going to punch them and knock them out before they even get a chance to lay a hit on us. Yes?
Is there any, because I have a local 1 and 2 class after this,
Mm-hmm.
and our other teacher was telling us that another reason they attacked us is because they wanted the Philippines.
Yes. They also wanted to move south towards the Philippines and Indonesia. Those are areas rich in the resources that they need. Rubber, oil, steel, gas. But we control it. So obviously, if they attack the Philippines, they were going to go ahead and wage war on us anyway. So they hit Pearl Harbor to knock our fleet out of the area so that we cannot attack. But obviously, we are able to bounce back, and we're able to continue the fight and ultimately win World War II in the Pacific. Now, for that first one, who can tell me why did the United States limit those resources? Yes?
They were scared that Japan was going to get too dangerous and take it. Explain.
Yep. We cut them off. No longer will they have the resources to fight. Very good. All right, number 2. What happened to the U.S. forces in the Philippines from your reading? What happened when they were captured and forced to surrender to the Japanese?
They died.
You were close. They were forced on what was known as the Bataan Death March. They were forced to walk 50 to 70 miles, I believe, some of them without shoes, in jungle. Can you imagine what that would feel like? Cutting at your feet, stepping on rocks and twigs, probably getting stuck in the swamp with barely any food or water to keep going. And then once you get to your destination, you're forced to work at a work camp to death, basically. Just getting to the camp, 7,000 Filipinos and Americans would die along it. The Japanese were very brutal, just like the Nazis and the Italians in Europe. There was no discernment of evil between the two. So that's going to be that's what happened to the forces in the Philippines for question number 2. Now, do we have any concerns or questions over this? Any curiosities that would like to be slated? All right. Here's what we're going to go ahead and have you do. Go ahead, pass that forward in your row. I'm going to go ahead and take that. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our notes.
Actually, maybe I got a D. Nope. 15 out of 72.
Okay, so let's go ahead and recap what was happening at this time. We recapped in our notes previously that Europe and Germany was starting to spread in Europe. They, like Japan here, was starting to take control. And obviously, Americans are still having bad memories of World War I. They're starting to think, we do not want to get involved in another world war. But this divide starts to get bigger. More people are seeing what is happening. People in the government, FDR, is starting to say, look, these tyrants, these dictators are getting more powerful, and they're going to get to a point where they're going to threaten us. And it's at this point when the Tripartite Pact is finalized. This is an agreement that basically says the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, are now allies. They are all dictators and totalitarianists together in the fight for the world. And with that, when Japan finally joins this group, America says, that's enough. I'm done. I'm pulling the plug. You're not getting any more of these resources to continue your war in the South Pacific. And as we discussed, Japan sees this as a threat, a big threat. They don't like anyone else telling them what to do. And there's more negotiations after that, but unfortunately, the Japanese just feel that America is not going to budge, which we're not. And they decide, we're going to land the first hit first. And it's going to be headed by the new Prime Minister of Japan, Hideki Tojo. He's highly militaristic, and he wants Japan to expand across Asia and the Pacific. But he doesn't want a war with America. He has a good idea of what would happen if that's the case. He knows what we are potentially capable of. And therefore, he tries to negotiate and keep America from getting involved. But that doesn't really happen, as we will learn in Pearl Harbor. This is the guy right here. Look at all those badges that he's wearing right there. Pretty high up in the military. Yeah, pretty high up in the military, and he gains control of Japan and its military. No longer is the emperor in charge. It's this guy right here. Now, this is where we get to the actual attack. December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy. The Japanese begin planning for weeks, if not maybe a couple months, to get ready to knock out our Pacific Fleet. They send in carriers, which will send airplanes to bomb shore facilities, bases, and ships and aircraft. In total, they will kill nearly 25 to 2,600 people. Battleships and destroyers will be damaged or crippled. Over 160 aircraft will be destroyed, and many more even damaged. But they didn't do as much damage as they thought they would. For one thing, they did not get our aircraft carriers, the big ships that hold our airplanes. Those were out on exercise near Alaska up north. And because of that, we have a big weapon that we can use to continue the fight in the Pacific. They also didn't hit the fuel reserves, which is a kind of interesting fact, because we need fuel to get our ships from point A to point B. And because of that, we now have an effective means to continue the fight in the Pacific. In the aftermath, well, here's the real photos of the aftermath of Pearl Harbor. Some of the more famous or infamous, if you will. All the destruction, black smoke clouded out the sky, wreckage and debris everywhere. And what you don't see all the thousands of bodies that were in the ocean because of the sinking of battleships. Now, after this, it is obvious that America is ready for war. Millions of men and hundreds of thousands of women flocked to the armed services. Women were accepted in only support roles, like nurses or support in the factories. But still, they were allowed to help. Millions of men and women, regardless of race, flocked to help their country, their home, defend their nation, and fight back against this enemy. And what happens, just like in World War I, we turn American industry into a powerhouse. Bottle factories were converted into making bullets. Cars factories were converted into making tanks and airplanes. Skylar, did you have something? Yeah. Okay, gotcha. and we become a juggernaut of production. We will eventually outproduce Germany, Italy, and Japan combined. We will make the most ships, the most tanks, and if I remember the number correctly, over 600 million bullets for that right there. And it's very impressive with what we were able to make at this time. Now, as we described earlier, it's not just Pearl Harbor that Japan's spreading to. They're spreading to Wake Island. They're spreading to the Philippines. They're going to go march south. I don't know if you can see on that map right there. They want to start controlling this area right here. That's where all their resources are, so they can continue their fight in China up here. And eventually, they want to head to Australia and New Zealand. They want everything in the area. And mainly in the Philippines, that's where we take the biggest hit in the area. The general in charge, General Douglas MacArthur, is ordered to evacuate because he's a key asset. We do not want one of our best generals to get captured by the Japanese. So he's forced to retreat to Australia. But the men under him were not. They were eventually cut off and they surrendered, and they were forced to go into the Bataan Death March, where eventually they would be forced to work in a work camp, basically until they die. And this is General Douglas MacArthur right here. Look at this guy. He's got a corncob pipe. He's got the aviator glasses. He's got the uniform. He's got it all. This is the guy that personally said, I will take back the Philippines, and I will meet you boys back there when I get there. He took it upon himself. And this is basically the Allied commander for the Pacific region. Kind of like Dwight D. Eisenhower will be for the European area. And this is what the map is I want to show you of how far Japan spreads. They go from that chain right here, this island chain right here, and they had this starting out as well. But in a matter of just a couple years, they start spreading and taking all of this land for resources to continue their war to eventually try and take all of this. That's what's happening here. And it's clear that they are a threat that we need to take care of. Now, America obviously wants revenge. We got hit pretty good. Mr. Macias, being like Japan, came over to me and clocked me in the face pretty darn good. I may be hit, I may be down, but I'm not out. So, what we do is we want to show Japan and to show the world that we're back still in this fight. So what we do, we organize the Doolittle Raid. Now, this was also in the Pearl Harbor movie, and Gavin, you did make a good point on explaining how that was, they need to try and modify the planes. We send a squadron of bombers to the Japanese islands, and we bomb an industrial area, a factory. We bomb a couple of factories to show Japan that we are not out of this war, and that we can hit you, even though you may be able to hit us. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but the raid is to improve morale. What do I mean when I say morale? Yes?
Like the belief in that you will win.
Yeah, it's the mood, it's the atmosphere. If you guys all were thinking for this, like a next test, oh man, I'm gonna fail, I can't do this. That's what morale is. If you guys feel that you can't accomplish it, then obviously that's going to make everyone else feel the same way. And it's going to basically ensure that you're not going to win. You're not going to succeed. And that's what this was meant for, to boost up morale, to show the American people that we can win this war. And also to show Japan that we got a couple of tricks up our sleeve as well. And now we get to the last portion here. We get to what's known as the Battle of the Coral Sea. This battle is ultimately a draw. Japan was trying to spread further south to set up a base so they can invade Australia eventually. Now, we stepped in with our Navy and our carriers and ships, and we fight the Japanese Navy. And it's to a standstill. They take about as much damage as we do. But it shows the world that America can fight off the seemingly unstoppable Japanese forces. We prove to ourselves and to the world that we can stop them. And this gives us hope for the future, that we can win this war. All right. That's going to be the conclusion of the notes for today. Does anyone have any questions about what we covered? I know we kind of went pretty quickly. All right. Everything that you need for your notes is going to be up here. What I want you to do before you put your notes away, though, I want you to put a star, highlight, or circle key things. I want you to highlight the American embargo. I want you to highlight Pearl Harbor. I want you to highlight America mobilizes for war, that we get ready for the fight that's coming. Japan is spreading. And then highlight, put a star by these two right here, the Battle of the Coral Sea and the Doolittle Raid. Because these two events show, mainly those events are key points of these notes, and definitely will be on the unit test.